Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending tonight's City Council meeting, our very first council meeting done by Zoom. So let's all begin the meeting like we always do by rising and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Item 3.1 is public comment. We have no public comment speaker slips, so we'll move to item 4, the consent calendar. Items generally approved as a group without discussion. I've had no requests to pull any items from the calendar. So with that, I will move that we approve the consent calendar for tonight's meeting.
And I'll second.
Very good. And as we do with telephonic and Zoom meetings, we will have a roll call by our city clerk.
Councilmember Kumagai?
Present. Oh, yes. Aye.
Councilmember Josie?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Goel?
Aye.
Mayor Halbert?
Aye. Thank you very much. The consent calendar is passed unanimously. We'll move on to item 6.1, the weed and combustible refuse abatement order. We'll have a staff report and also accept any public comments, and we do have one speaker slip. So we'll have the staff report.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, tonight we have a public hearing. It's an annual public hearing related to our weed abatement order and proceeding. Fire Marshal Bonnie Terra is happy to make a presentation, a very short presentation if that's your desire. If that's the case, we can go ahead and have her give you a brief presentation as to why we do this.
Please.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Back on February 4th, you approved Resolution 5-20, declaring weeds and combustible debris a public nuisance, and set today as the date for the public hearing. Since that date, staff conducted 240 inspections during the week of March 9th and sent out 65 initial letters to property owners asking them to abate their weeds and combustible debris. At this point in the process, staff is requesting that you conduct the public hearing, deliberate, and by motion direct staff to continue the weed abatement process. And as the city manager indicated, this is an annual process that has been put in place so that by the time we get to the time of year when weeds and other things are dry and very dangerous, they're already abated, and we can continue to maintain a safe city of Dublin. That ends my presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Terra. We'll now proceed to the member of the public who would wish to speak on this item.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we have Erica Ratto on the line, and she will be joining and she'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Ms. Ratto, welcome. Ms. Erica Ratto, public comment. Now is the time to log in. Welcome.
Mr. Mayor, we'll give her maybe another 30 seconds if she can't make her connection, but she wants to speak, we can leave the hearing open until she makes her connection and we can bring her back in.
Okay.
John, we would just leave the hearing open. Is that correct?
That's correct. We could even move on to the next item as well.
Hello, Ms. Ratto, welcome. Hello, Ms. Ratto, are you there? Ms. Ratto, can you hear us? Hello?
I think why don't we keep the hearing open? Mayor, if you'd like to do that, well, they figure out what the technical reasons are for her not being able to come into the meeting.
Very well. We will leave the meeting open on item 6.1. We will proceed to new business item 8.1. This is an update from the city manager on the impact of COVID-19, including city finances. Ms. Smith.
Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you again for this opportunity to present to you this evening. Before I give the mic over to Assistant City Manager Tribby, who will provide you an update on our financials, I wanted to highlight for you and for the public the ways in which we're continuing our operations and our role with the shelter-in-place order. Our emergency services coordinator has been keeping up with all of the efforts at the county level and providing us with daily briefings. As of today, on the 4 o'clock call, there's 634 confirmed cases in Alameda County. That's an increase from 46, up 46 from yesterday. Tomorrow, the Healthcare Services Agency is going to roll out a data dashboard, and that will include city-level data. Our Emergency Operations Center here at City Hall has been activated. We have activated our command, our logistics, our finance sections, as well as our documentation and our demobilization units. Our logistics units is working with the county and state social services agencies to secure a Dublin hotel to house vulnerable COVID populations as part of the state's Operation Room Key, or for first responders who need to be isolated from their families. The demobilization unit is beginning to plan for the eventual return to standard operations. Our finance section is tracking all of the expenses from this event and monitoring those opportunities for future reimbursement. The city is now helping to publicize a request from the county as they're collecting information from individuals who wish to work in medical and healthcare settings and are willing to work shifts with alternate patient care locations within the county. This is part of their county's surge planning efforts, which are focused around staffing, supplies, and space. As it relates back to Dublin, we have closed all of our city facilities except for Dublin Police Services. All of our full-time staff, with few exceptions, including myself and the Assistant City Manager, our HR Director, our Public Information Officer, our Public Works Director, and 3 admin staff, are all working remotely on an ongoing basis. And of course, our Dublin Police Services team. Dublin Police Services and our code enforcement staff have been working on enforcement matters related to the shelter-in-place order. They have provided notices to businesses when they believe that they fall outside of the order. We've also, and I've indicated to you in an email I sent to you late last week, we've made some decisions around part-time staffing. That information was sent out to our part-time staff this afternoon. We will discontinue our part-time staffing beginning with the next pay period, which is beginning on April 11th. We also, and that will continue until we know more related to the shelter-in-place order. We've made a decision not to add any staffing at this point, and that impacts our ability to open the wave on our regular scheduled end of Memorial Day, as though the shelter-in-place order may or may not be still in place by then. We have no idea. but we wanted to make sure we didn't go out and start recruiting more people to work for us in a time when we're uncertain when they would even begin to work. These decisions for part-time staffing has also affected other summer programming. At this point, we are postponing all summer programming until further notice, at which point we understand the restraints and the constraints of working within any sort of social distancing measures in the future. We'll work to bring back as quickly as possible as many opportunities for families to take advantage of summer programs. Until that time, we're suspending our operations of summer programs. Separate from that, we also postponed Dublin Pride Week, obviously falling within the time frame of the current shelter-in-place order. So we will postpone that and look to bring that back in September. Our park staff has been hard at work behind the scenes trying to figure out ways to keep our community active and stimulated and engaged. And they've been working on the development of a virtual recreation room, which was launched, I believe, yesterday, and gives the community opportunities to do a variety of things, take tours of museums from their home. Preschool teachers are reading out loud that they can have their kids tune in and listen to the preschool teachers read to them. It's a great tool that we're making available to our community and to anyone in the Tri-Valley or anyone elsewhere who would want to take advantage of those activities that we've provided. That is a summary of the things that we've been doing here. It's been a busy time. Our phones are very busy here at City Hall. Lots of questions from the community that we try to direct to the appropriate person. Lots of questions about essential businesses, lots of questions about what people can and can't do. And we're trying to make sure that everyone is able to connect with the people who have those answers for them. This is it's a unique time in our history. One I hope we never have to repeat again in the future. And I just appreciate the continued support of the City Council as we make tough decisions over the next several weeks about programming and the way we can support our community over the long term. With that, I'm going to turn it over to, unless you have any questions for me on my verbal report, I'm going to turn it over to Colleen, who's going to tell you a little bit more about the impacts as we see them today, which could be different in a week at this point with things changing so rapidly, but at this point, where we see things with our financial picture.
Okay, honorable mayor and council members. Obviously, things have changed quite a bit since we were in front of you at the strategic planning meeting in early March. As we wrote in the report, the pandemic has had a significant impact on city revenues and city operations, and we're going to see some immediate effects from it. We're doing our best to be as accurate and careful as possible. And so this report has our best and most up-to-date information in it. And the first and largest impact we expect to see is in sales tax. You know, this is a new reality. People aren't getting out and about to our Dublin businesses. And we're estimating to lose about $1.9 million in the current year. And that would be for some of quarter one and all of quarter two of this calendar year. That really starts to resemble the impact of the recession of 2008. And so we need to prepare for that in our budget. We've taken 15% off of the original budget numbers you saw at the strategic planning session. That's the best we can do right now. We feel comfortable with that, but we certainly are in contact with our sales tax consultants, and we are planning on having a conversation with them as they're having with all of their local agency clients. We don't expect to see impacts on property tax until next fiscal year, and we don't know what those will be exactly. But what we can plan for is a higher delinquency rate. We've always been very careful with delinquency, and we've planned for about a 3%. And we've taken that up to 5% now in the budget. And we also plan for potentially a lower CPI adjustment. So instead of the 2% per year that property taxes would go up, we plan for slightly lower than that, and we plan for fewer sales transactions. That's sort of what we know about what typically happens in a situation like this. It's important to know that the numbers that you see in the report are changes to the budget numbers, and they reflect, so there's a little bit of growth in the budget number now. And so the point is, it's not actual money lost when you look at fiscal 2021 in the property tax column. It's just a much, much smaller growth number than we thought we would have. In fact, I would call it nearly flat. There's very, very minimal growth built into fiscal 2021. We also expect a hit to our interest income that could begin as early as next fiscal year, but that will continue in the longer term as it did with the last recession. As investments mature and we reinvest, it simply won't be the same economic environment anymore until we start climbing out of that well. That also happened in the last recession. The suspension of city programming in the recreation area causes immediate net revenue losses to the tune of almost $600,000 in the current year. And we can reasonably expect that to continue into the summer. And so we've carried that into the 2021 budget. That's the best we can do with what we know right now. We will certainly be back to you with more information when we bring the budget to you. We know that this situation is going to have an effect on development and permitting revenues. We're just not comfortable with that number right now for the current year, but I will say that in the 10-year forecast, we have always been very careful to decline development revenues so that we can cover ourselves in the event that we become a built-out community. And it's the same effect as losing those revenues in a recessionary situation. So I just wanted to add that. But we will include an update to the 10-year forecast, which will look different than the one you've seen in the past. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Ms. Tribby. Let's go to questions from the council. I'll start and go in order with Vice Mayor Goel. Any questions of either Ms. Smith or Ms. Tribby?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, staff, for a very thorough presentation considering the position we're all faced on, which is very uncertain times. I got three kind of quick questions. And first of all, I want to extend my appreciation to the conservative approach that staff has taken that led up to our 10-year outlook. And I do understand that we will be having some revisions and potentially some impacts showing up on the further out. So I assume in our revised 10-year vantage, we will be able to see that potential impact as best as we know it. I realize it's going to be real time from now on until we get a better handle. With that, I wanted to ask two focused questions. One specifically around as we go into this particular uncertainty, we're looking at our operating costs from facilities going down, our staffing costs going down. Have we looked at or kept an eye on impacts relative to the retirement system? Now I'll go ahead and ask the second question as well, and that way you guys can get prepared and answer appropriately. As we also look to managing our finances and we're managing our emergency and tracking as such, are we also getting the ability to look ahead and be proactive for critical procurements, especially as we return to the norm situation, i.e. cleanup services, janitorial, et cetera, special needs services, opportunities where we can potentially take advantage of the bidding climate, the market climate, and also realization that we will be one of many getting in line for potential measures as the quote return to norm and building up community confidence as we go back to that revised norm. Those are my two questions. Thank you.
So I'm going to go ahead and let Colleen handle the first part, which is the retirement system question.
Well, Honorable Mayor and council members, clearly there's going to be an impact on the pension fund, and it's going to mimic what happened during the recession. And we all know what happened thereafter. CalPERS lowered their discount rate, which impacted cities that hadn't planned for it greatly. And I believe that the few times that I've been in front of you over the last year and a half, when we've talked about the lowering of the discount rate, we've said that we need to plan for it to be lowered even more. So we are in a position right now where we expect it to be lowered. This pandemic, not considering this pandemic, we had planned for it to be lower. So I don't know financially, Vice Mayor, what the answer is on the impact of this situation on the pension fund, except to say it will earn less and we will pay more. And we have planned for that and we've already planned for an annual contribution of $1 million a year on top of our required contribution in the case that something like this happens. So you will not see an impact in the 10-year forecast related to pension funding because of this situation. But I don't know what the number is. I just know that we've planned really well for it. I hope that helps.
That absolutely does. And thank you for the foresight and proactiveness on staff side for that. Thank you.
Is there any other questions on that component, financial component? I can answer the question on critical procurement. We are, I don't think we're in that phase yet because we're still in the reactionary phase, but soon we'll be shifting gears and talking about what we need to get remobilized. And in doing so, we need to think more about what it's going to take for us to do that. For example, things that we have to consider now when operating our buildings currently is we need to ensure that anyone that walks in this building doesn't have a temperature. And we are trying to procure temporal thermometers, much like everybody else on the planet at this point in time. So our practices are going to change. We're going to have to take the temperature of everybody walking in this building, and we have protocols that we're going to have to put in place for that. I'd like to say what we would be putting forward for additional janitorial services. I'm not sure that they're the agent that needs to do that, or if there's other sanitation services out there that we need to look at. So those are things we're going to be exploring as we try to maintain a clean building when we are able to open again. Clean for the public, clean for the employees. That would be an example of something we would need to look at. I know we've already looked at it with respect to Dublin Police Services. They had an issue with turning their vehicles around in a timely fashion because of the sanitizing requirements for their vehicles. And so I authorized and we procured some equipment for them that will allow them to quickly sanitize their police vehicles and work areas so that they can get back into the field as quickly as possible. So that's something that we thought about, and they came to us proactively and said, hey, if we have this, we can move quicker and we won't incur as much downtime. So we did that. As examples of the things we're going to talk about, I think when we come back to you and talk about the budget, that's some of the things that we can highlight in our budget report as we start really understanding mid next month what those things are that are going to require us to open again and to be safe in how we move forward in our operations. So I appreciate the question, Vice Mayor. I think I don't have a direct answer, only to say that those are things that we're going to be thinking about, and they'll be presented as part of the budget, and they can be highlighted as well if you'd like.
Thank you for that response. And I guess where I was trying to go with that, first of all, congratulations on the proactiveness, both between the police chief and city staff on being able to focus on an innovative solution that allows for that quick turn, which is actually a benefit to us in multiple ways to have a good return on investment. So that way we don't have high cost of exposure due to increased overtime and downtime of those vehicles returning the street where it should be focused on providing those services to the public. And so really what I wanted to do was open up the gate and the door to kind of say any proactive measures for procurement or solicitation that we need to forwardly provide the city manager with that. I think we should consider that or provide them the opportunity to return as soon as possible with more information so we can give them the necessary authorization and approval. Thank you.
Very good. Questions continuing through the council to Councilmember Hernandez.
I don't necessarily have any questions. I feel that Colleen and our staff have always done a really great job to look at the long term and obviously now the short term, and especially the lost revenues that we're going to have in the future. So it seems like, Colleen, you've always been preparing we never thought it would be this, but you have always been constantly preparing. So I really do appreciate you guys and always running a really tight ship. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hernandez. Councilmember Josie.
Hi, thank you. I want to echo what Councilmember Hernandez said about the great job that our financial staff has always done with conservative budgeting. And then in addition to the revenue projections, I know you guys are looking at expense projections as well, and those are harder to predict. In addition to sales tax and property tax, TOT is probably going to be down for a while, not just on late fees that we're going to talk about in a minute, but in actual occupancy. Obviously, they're going to be down for a little while right now, but into the future, as patterns change, and we don't know how people's long-term habits are going to change as a result of what's happening right now. It's harder to predict what expenses are going to change and what contractors are going to come back to us with higher bids and things like that. So I'm curious to see if you have any insight on what you think expenses are going to do in the predictions coming forward. You may not be able to answer that yet.
I don't know if we'll be able to answer that. I mean, we can talk about the things that we can control right now, which is our staffing costs. We have our ongoing contracts and we have a lot of on-call contracts where we already have fixed rates, particularly around the procurement of professional services and consulting services as it relates to, bidding for other services. We have absolutely no idea other than to say that with the most recent update to the shelter-in-place order, most of the contractors are not working right now unless you're doing affordable projects or projects for healthcare, that is in direct response to COVID-19. So I think, I'm not sure where a lot of these places are just leaving their job sites and taking a break. They'll have to return to those job sites and contractually finish that work. So I'm not sure what impact it might have on the bidding climate. I think that the people, when they do end up going back to work, are going to be very busy. We'll have to take a look at this in the context of our upcoming bids that will be coming out probably in the fall, which probably includes Fallon Sports Park, and see what impact that might have. We'll have to check in with the developers of the Boulevard project for what impact this might have on the development of Don Biddle Community Park, since we're getting very close to permitting that park. And because in that arrangement, we have an expense that is in excess of whatever they spend is, I believe, $12.5 million. Is that correct, Colleen?
Yeah.
Anything above that is an expense of the city that we'll have to incur. So we'll need to adjust, and take a look at that and check in with them. They're obviously right now shut down because they don't meet the obligation under the order for the affordable component. So they're winding down, securing their site, and ensuring those that have already purchased homes are able to locate in those homes, but that's the extent of their operation.
I was also thinking in terms of contracts that we have, for example, MCE may have to change some of their business practices, and we're not really sure what those ways might be going forward. I mean, obviously, a lot of our facilities are shut down right now, but when they reopen, we may have different cleaning procedures than we have right now going forward forever.
Perpetuity potentially.
Yes, exactly.
For a period of a couple of years.
Right. And so if they have to add manpower to do that or add hours to do that, that might incur costs to us, things like that. So those are the kinds of things that obviously you guys will be looking at and that you'll be bringing back to us in the future budget.
Yes.
I'm hopeful that we'll have a better handle on what our increased expenses might be that are non-staff related, not city staff related, by the time we come back to you with the budget, and we can comment on that.
Great. Thank you very much. That's it for my questions, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Councilmember Kumagai, questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, staff, for the report. I had a question on cash flows. So the county has announced that they will not issue any fines, or they have the discretion to not issue fines if folks impacted by COVID-19 cannot pay their property tax on the April 10th deadline. And the state recently announced that they would allow a delay for the submittal of sales tax revenues to the state. These kinds of delays in tax revenues, how is that going to impact our cash flows?
Well, we have we're fortunate to have a very healthy cash flow. We've adopted budgets in the last couple of years that are in, $10 million plus to the surplus. So this idea of delays in property tax, sales tax, these things are not really, I don't want to say they're not as important. They're not as impactful as a reset recession is to us. We can certainly weather the delay of taxes for a pretty long period of time. We have healthy cash balance. We have healthy undesignated fund balance. And not to get too technical, but the delay of taxes is an asset that the city owns. And so we book it in a certain way. And if we're not cash to the positive, then we worry about it. We're not going to worry about those kinds of things.
And probably our property tax receipts are going to be fairly static, at least for the foreseeable future. But our sales tax revenues are going to go down based off of this hit to the just the day-to-day economy of our city. Are we anticipating that whole budget deficit that we were looking at, or that budget reduction that we're looking at, is coming from those sales tax reductions?
The budget reduction that we're going to see in the current year, the actual revenues are going to come right out of sales tax. We don't know how long that's going to last. The same thing happened in 2008. And between property sales and interest income, we lost about $5 million. Sales tax, we took a hit for about a year and then began climbing out of it in the last recession. Property tax was sort of spread out over 2 years, and then interest income was a little bit longer. But sales tax will be the most immediate, largest hit. And we just don't have a good idea of how long that will go on before we then start climbing out.
Okay. And Linda, I know we've been fielding questions from constituents, both personal questions and business questions. Can you kind of give us a picture of what kind of phone calls you guys are getting? What are constituents struggling with right now?
We're getting a multitude of questions, a lot of employees wondering if they really need to report to work. So a lot of the questions we're getting pertain to the order that was issued by Alameda County, what's allowed, what isn't allowed, concerns about people being evicted from their homes or evicted from their commercial business location. So we've been keeping them apprised. We have a repository of information at the front desk so we can keep people apprised of what actions have occurred at the state level, what resources are available to businesses. Our economic development team continues to reach out to the business community to make them aware of the programs that are offered at the federal state level. And recently we sent you the most recent resource guide that we've been issuing to the business community. I think the questions are a lot around that, what people can do, what parks are open, those sorts of questions. And, people are anxious, as are most individuals through this circumstance, trying to figure it all out. And we just want to make sure they get accurate and good information. And that's what we're trying to provide to the public.
And I'm glad you brought up the questions on evictions. I believe there's been some talk recently at the county and state level about relief for at least the prosecution or the procedural advancement of eviction cases. Is that what's the latest on that?
So the latest I know is that, and maybe John Bacher knows more about this or has been following it, or John Stefanski. My understanding is that at this point they're basically staying any evictions, and the courts are not taking any cases typically through the shelter-in-place order timeframe established by the county. John Bacher, did I get that correct, or is that?
I think that's right. And in addition, I think the Judicial Council today or yesterday issued another order basically suspending court actions on unlawful detainers for 60 days following the governor, after the governor revokes the emergency declaration. So that stay will be in effect for a long time.
But just to be clear, Mr. Bacher, the stay on evictions kicks the can down the road, so to speak. There's no statewide or countywide system in place to defer rent payments or put a system in place for a graduated repayment of delinquent rents for those who are not able to make rent right now.
Correct.
All right, thank you. Well, I just want to say it's not really a question, but just a comment. I think that what I'm experiencing is there are a lot of constituents, particularly those who don't necessarily have the safety net within their own finances or within the situation that they're employed under. They are getting hardest hit by this, and our small businesses, particularly those with 25 and under employees, are getting hardest hit by this. And I think a lot of people are suffering in silence right now, and we're not going to see the real impacts to those folks for a couple months down the road. I think this is the calm before the storm, and I just would ask that staff be ready to come up with innovative ideas for how we can accommodate for the most vulnerable in our community going forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Kumgai. So a question that I have is related to personal protective equipment, and for the folks that we have police services and fire, for any other city workers that require these. What is the status of our supply? Do we have what we need, and are they in the right hands?
So I can let the chiefs on the line, I can let him speak to the procurement of masks and PPE for Dublin Police Services, because I believe they're procuring those to the sheriff's office. Alameda County Fire, I believe, is able to procure what they need, with all the city staff working from home, with the exception of 5 or 6 folks at any given time. We're just following the general orders that are provided to the general public about when you're in public, make sure you have a mask and, protect yourself. When we do come back into an office environment, we'll have to understand what the constraints are at that time. Anybody, again, as I said earlier, coming into this building needs to be checked. And we're going to be instituting that as soon as we can get our hands on some temporal thermometers. Because that has been difficult to procure at this point, and everybody is experiencing that same problem. PPE in general, those requests are being coordinated with Alameda County OES. This isn't a local issue. This is more of a regional issue, and they're taking the requests from hospitals and from other healthcare agencies and doing disbursements as needed. I don't know if John Stefanski is on the call or listening to the call, and he can speak to that more specifically. But if he's not on the call, we can get back to you and provide that information. He is? John? Okay. He doesn't have a voice on the call. He's texting me. So we'll have to get you that information.
Very good. Not a problem. No, thank you very much. I would also like to say that and echo what Councilmember Kumagai said. There are a lot of people that are probably most likely suffering in silence. The calm before the storm. In a few months, we will then see people that are struggling, need help. That said, I would also like to say there are members of our community that are stepping up to the plate and that are helping out. And so to the extent that we can work with those wonderful people giving of themselves and coordinate how to get things that are of surplus from some to those that are in need. And I think we've already seen some examples of that, where I've had people come to me and say, hey, we have extra of this. How can we get it in the hands of those that need? And Linda, you've been able to handle some of those sort of on the fly, but what procedures and practices do we have in place?
Yeah. So
that?
Anybody who wishes to donate any sort of PPE to the city would be coordinated through our logistics group. They're the ones that are talking with the nonprofits and other agencies to determine what is needed. John Stefanski, are you now able to join the call? Maybe not. John, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we're actually in the process of putting together some content for the city's website to direct our residents on how they can help not only the city, but also our nonprofit partners throughout the extent of this crisis. And talking with them, our nonprofit partners, the thing that they're looking for right now is monetary donations. And so that's really the number one thing that they're asking us. They've been able to coordinate through the county to get the necessary PPE to continue to provide services to those in need. But that's what they're requesting right now. But we'll have the instructions on how to help those folks up on our website later this week.
Great. We do have a generous community. They are stepping up to the plate. Let's continue to help them do that. To some more financial questions. I have to imagine that, and I don't want to beat a horse dead here, but we have experience with the 2008 crisis recession, Colleen. But honestly, I mean, today, nobody, very, very few people buying gasoline, and gasoline sales tax comes to us. Nobody buying new cars, and new cars are a big part of our tax base. Maybe we have some people ordering takeout, and those that are supporting our local businesses, thank you, keep doing that. But I have to imagine that we are going to really be hit hard. Do we have any, week over week or month over month for the month of March comparisons, for example, or is it just too early to tell, in which case I would ask that we maybe have a continued review and report back to the city council on a regular basis of this. Let's really keep, and I know you are, and I know you will, because you're awesome at doing this, a close tabs on our sales tax.
Colleen, why don't you just explain how reporting occurs on sales tax? It happens on a quarterly basis.
It does, and we're typically 2 quarters behind. So we get information much later about the prior 2 quarters. Believe me, Mr. Mayor, we have been hounding our sales tax consultant, and we do keep tabs on, we haven't done weekly, we've done monthly sales by sector. And just like you're saying, this is hugely significant. And so we essentially in the current year wiped out any revenue from the second quarter. Now, we haven't had a meeting with our HDL consultants yet, but we expect we expect to be hearing something along the lines of what you're saying. As soon as we can get an update for you, I imagine Linda will be sharing with you what the consultant thinks. We think we've done what we can for the current year. The next year budget will be something that will be a bit more fluid as we get more information.
Very good. The last thing I'll ask Ms. Smith to comment on. Indeed, last week was the first time I know ever where the Alameda County tax collector said they would waive penalties and fees for those property tax payers who are not unable to pay property tax, as long as they qualify through their process for defining financial crisis due to coronavirus pandemic. I'm proud that the Alameda County mayors unanimously supported that, as well as the Alameda County city managers. And Ms. Smith, you had a lot to do with that. Thank you very much. But I have to now ask the question. I know it was the right thing to do because many people are on that edge and can't pay today, but give them 60 days to wrestle with this. The right thing to do, but will that affect us here in Dublin?
So there, I think we don't have a number we can give you. I think when we talk about delinquencies, we've increased what we think might occur in that regard from, I think you said, Colleen, 3 to 5% in our upcoming forecast. But we know that the impact of not collecting any of those penalties will be, in the overall picture, minimal to the impacts of all the other things that we're going to have to tackle in the coming budget year. Colleen?
Yes.
Is that fair?
Yes, very fair.
Okay, understood. Thank you again for your leadership in that area. And what I'd like to do now is say that I think we've exhausted all the questions. If not hearing any others, I'll say that we would receive the report for item 8.
Mayor, we do have the speaker for this item, Kunal Kawar. Can we put Kunal through for his 3 minutes to address the council?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
We can.
All right. Hello, distinguished council members. My name is Kunal Kaware, and I'm a rising junior at Corey Lane High School. And amid this unprecedented crisis, I've been trying to think of ways to help my community. I have come up with some solutions and ideas that I feel need to be advocated and addressed by the City Council. My primary solution consists of a deep cleaning that should take place on any publicly and city-owned facilities or utilizations. Such services include public transit, public schools, monuments, parks or playgrounds, sidewalks or side rails, crosswalk machines, and any publicly used social benefit that has incurred a large foot traffic. I believe that there is a looming stigma and hysteria surrounding a decontamination process in affected cities and counties. And I feel like it can bolster confidence within the community as part of city government taking initiative. In order to fully pay for this project, I implore the City Council and City Manager to establish or utilize pre-existing emergency relief funding for allocation in these cleanings. In addition to that, I would like to see the creation of a specialized task force embraced and supported by the city to complete and oversee such activities that take place. Stages, I feel that our city elected officials and community leaders need to start building infrastructure for these projects and start imagining and planning the recovery in which our city can emerge stronger and more prepared for pandemics. I believe that new health protocols need to be put in place for businesses to follow in preparation for other pandemics. Honestly, I want to feel safe among my community, my peers, and my friends. And I'm calling upon those that have the power to accomplish these tasks. I strongly hope you consider these proactive proposals. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kawari. Are there any other speakers from the public? Ms. Smith, I think you're muted.
We don't have any speaker slips for any matters regarding this item. We will need to return back to the other hearing and see if we have Erica on the line.
Very good. Let's finish 8.1 and move back to 6.1 and see if we have our speaker. Very good.
She resubmitted another speaker slip at 7:15. I emailed her and asked her if she's unable to connect, if she can send me her comments, and I will read them into the record.
Very good. We'll move on to item 8.2, short-term waiver of penalties for late payment of transit or occupancy tax.
John Bacher, do you want to take this one?
Sure, I can take this one.
Sure.
So this is a fairly simple item. It basically, with respect to the hotels are having obviously a very difficult time in this environment. And this item would allow those hoteliers to defer paying their TOT receipts when they're due for a period of time. I don't have the.
We lost him. He went on mute. Give us a second. It's not perfect.
There we go. I'm back. Sorry. So this is a simple item, as I said, involving basically providing hotels with an opportunity to defer paying their transient occupancy taxes for a period of time. I don't have the staff report in front of me at the moment.
I do. Do you want me to pick it up, this portion of it?
Yeah, well, I mean, as long as basically it would, they would be able to defer their transient occupancy taxes for the period from January 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2020, so long as they remit all taxes by July 31st, 2020. And that's the basic bottom line of how this resolution would operate. And with that, staff would recommend you approve the resolution. I don't know if you wanted to add anything else to that, Linda.
Only to say that, you know, our current ordinance requires us to establish penalties if payment isn't received in a certain period of time. The way we've established our periods, Colleen, can you clarify, are we doing that on a monthly or quarterly basis?
It's a monthly basis.
And we could have chosen between the two. And so people are trying to remit their payments. We've already heard from one or more hotels who have asked about extending and not having to pay the penalty, because there's a 10% penalty in our ordinance that's required for them to pay if they are late. So we want to make sure that when they do make a late payment, that we're not adhering this other penalty to them, which again compounds at the end of another 30-day period where they have to pay it again. So we wanted to make sure we cleared the way, much in the way that other people are clearing the way of penalties and waivers, that we didn't penalize these people for not being able to pay on time. Now, TOT is, of course, a pass-through, right? So it's something that they've collected from the consumer who has stayed at the hotel and passed it through. But the same can be said of sales tax as well. And we know that the governor has already taken action to allow certain businesses earning less or taxable income of $5 million or less to basically hold on to that cash for the time being, knowing that that will need to be repaid in the future. And so this is no similar model that people can hang on to that cash if they need to and not be penalized for holding on to it, as long as they make their payments of their revenue that they have collected from consumers to us by July 31st. Now, if this is based on what we know today, which is that the shelter-in-place order continues and will continue until at least May 3rd at this point. We could come back to you if we see that that continues beyond that period of time and ask you for a further amendment to that. We're not asking for that now, but if that's something that the council wants us to take a look at, we can certainly either do that with this resolution, or we can come back to you at a future date to make any changes to this program.
Very good. I'll ask if there are any questions about this item. I'll start with Vice Mayor Goel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and appreciate the staff memo and thoughtfulness, proactive on this very critical measure that supports several hotels within our city. First of all, thank you on the background of how this item came forward. It was a request, I guess, from a hotel experiencing a challenge. As such, I think my suggestion for consideration, and I think city manager alluded to it, was providing them some additional flexibility inside of this resolution. So I would be interested in considering that, maybe up to 90 days, posturing with the fact of 30 days from the return of or reversal of the shelter in place. And I just think it'll help from an administrative standpoint, so as much not to have to bring it back. But outside of that, I see no other major concerns. This is a support system, and an offset for a pass-through really offsets administrative burden on these hotels, and it softens up the financial exposure that they have during a very unprecedented, trying time that nobody had projected from a financial perspective. Thank you.
Very good. Council Member Hernandez, questions?
No, I think it's important for us to take this into consideration because of the fact on how important all of our hotels are to us. You know, again, no one expected this at all whatsoever. So I don't mind it coming back if we needed to amend it again. I think it's important for us to keep in contact with them as well, to make sure that, you know, this might go a month past May. It can go into June. So we don't really have the answer for that right now, but definitely considering to help them out.
Councilmember Josie?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Kumagai?
I don't have any questions.
Very good. I would like to echo the comments made by Councilmember Goel, Vice Mayor Goel, and Councilmember Hernandez. Indeed, willing to go beyond 30 days if needed, willing to go 30 days beyond, say, the eventual lifting of the stay in place order. Willing to do whatever we need to do to ensure the financial stability of the hotels in town. It's been said by Ms. Tribby that we can afford to do this. If that ever changes, we need to know that, but would be willing to entertain extending this if needed. Ms. Smith, what is easiest and most practical from your perspective? Should we handle this with the resolution allowing you that discretion? Should we pass it as is and ask you to come back? I hate to burden you with that. Can we just give you that discretion?
I would prefer if we could just amend the resolution tonight by motion. That also adds a condition that the city manager, if you like, if you don't want to see it again, we can certainly handle it at our level. If it is the council's desire that the city manager would have the discretion to extend it for another 90 days. I see Councilmember Josie raising her hand.
Councilmember Josie, questions?
I actually kind of like it the way it is because giving us an update is not a bad thing. If we feel we need to extend it, I don't think it would take us a long time to discuss it, and just for us to know, I don't think it would be anything that we would not want to extend. But just for us and for the public to have the item come back to us to say, hey, look, this is still going on. Our hotels need our help. Let's take a proactive stance to extend it. So I'm perfectly comfortable with the resolution as is.
Councilmember Josie, would you agree that to keep it as is, but allow any future update like that to come on consent calendar for which
Yes.
we pull if we want? Very good.
Yes.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution as is and ask that any updates to this would be brought back before us on consent calendar.
And I will second that.
If needed. Okay. And second. So with that, we'll ask the city clerk to call for the roll call vote.
Councilmember Kumagai,
Aye.
Councilmember Josie,
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Goel,
Aye.
Mayor Halbert.
Aye. Thank you very much. Shall we move back to the item 6.1? Do we have the speaker?
Mayor, I think we should move back because it is a public hearing and we can confirm again whether or not Erica has been able to connect with us. Okay.
Is this a time-sensitive item?
Yes.
Linda, do you happen to know what her comments were? Is she a property owner?
No, I don't know what her comments are. I received the email with her email address and I immediately at 7:15 emailed her to let her know that if she sent me her comments in written form in response to the email that I would read them into the record. I have not heard back. I'm checking.
Okay, well, Mr. Mayor, I don't have any concerns with the council proceeding forward, but I just wanted to see if we could get whatever her comments were on the record before you acted. That would have been preferable. But in the absence of her comments, I think you can just proceed with taking action.
So with that, I'll consider that we'll move back to item 6.1 during the public hearing. I'll close the public hearing and I'll make a motion that we would direct staff to continue the weed abatement process. And I'll entertain a second.
I'll second.
And I'll ask the city clerk to proceed with the roll call vote.
Councilmember Kumagai,
Aye.
Councilmember Josie,
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Goel,
Aye.
Mayor Halbert.
Aye. With that, we'll move on to item 9, other business. And I'll start by asking Ms. Smith to provide any update under item 9.
Sure. So just a couple of items. The first one is that this is the new forum that we have to work with right now. And we were very happy to have TV30 be of assistance to us in setting up this meeting. I think moving forward, we're going to have to look at the time of this meeting. I don't know what time we're going to be able to do this. We could probably keep the same days, but I just wanted to make sure you understood that you know, in addition to serving us at this time, I think TV30 also serves the city of Pleasanton during this time, typically. So we just need to make sure we coordinate our meetings so that they can both be televised and organized by TV30. So I will be back in touch with you as it relates to the next date of the meeting. Let's see. So this Thursday, we've been paying attention to what other communities have been doing and trying to engage using these types of platforms with their community. on the topic of COVID-19. And we've looked at those models, and we think we've got a more refined model that we'd like to put into place. And so on Thursday morning, starting at 10 a.m., the city is going to start a series of what we're going to call virtual community conversations. There'll be 3 topic areas, and we'll just sequentially hit on them. So members of the community can come talk to us about, if they're looking first at 10 a.m., if they're looking for a general public health update, they can join that call. It will be 45 minutes. We'll have a representative of Alameda County Public Health on the call. We'll have a representative of Stanford Valley Care Hospital on the call, so they can talk about what's going on from a medical response standpoint and their local preparedness and testing. We'll provide the residents and the community with an update on the efforts the city have been undertaking, in addition to having the chief of police just advise them of the enforcement efforts going on in the city. We've getting lots of questions about volunteering and where to donate and things that we've talked about. We will talk to the community on that call about where they can direct their efforts and provide that information on our website as well. The second call, because what we've seen on some of these town hall community conversations has really been around the issue of schools. It's something that we don't have direct control over, but we thought in terms of a series of forums, it makes sense to combine them in. So Superintendent Markin and the board president will hold a community conversation beginning, I believe, at 11:30 on Thursday on the Zoom platform. And they will talk about things that are happening with the schools. A lot is going on in terms of distance learning, grades and things like that, and graduation. So they'll have to address those questions. We can also, in that call, provide a minimum update on the things that we talked about on the 10 o'clock call, but maybe more focus on the use of parks and facilities and things that we want people to comply with. Then after that, at 1 o'clock, there'll be a call. We'll be focused on the business community and giving the business community an opportunity to connect with our economic development staff in the Chamber of Commerce, really trying to get an update on what are the new order requirements and what are the resources that are available to local businesses, and have them be able to ask questions of our staff in the chamber. Those are the 3 formats we wanted to put in place. We will be done with those at 1:30. You're more than welcome to join us on the call. The mayor will be emceeing those calls on behalf of the city, and I'll also be participating, as will the chief of police, on all those calls. Beyond that, I know that you wanted a quick update on the farmers market. So we held Pacific Coast Farmers Market held their first market last Thursday at 4 o'clock. By all accounts, it was a slow market. The way that the farmers market has been reoriented and redesigned is that no one can touch the produce. All the producers are wearing masks and gloves, and no one can enter into any of the booth space. So everything is pre-bagged for the purchaser of the produce. Last week we had, over the course of 4 hours, about 125 people. Most of the people came probably towards the beginning of the market. Markets are generally slow in the beginning, but obviously with what's going on with COVID-19, that was exceptionally slow. We expect next week to probably be similar in terms of turnout. In terms of the number of vendors, we had 10 to 12 vendors, I believe, at the last market. We would expect the same at the next. Just a point to note, if we continue attracting only 125 people over a 4-hour period, it may not make sense for producers to come out. So this thing might find itself just sort of the producers not showing up and then ultimately not continuing with the market. We just wanted to make sure that the community had an opportunity to purchase food directly from farms. A lot of people have anxiety going into the grocery store in this current climate. There's so many things that you can come into contact with, and being in an open air space felt like an opportunity to provide people who have that anxiety an opportunity to get their produce through another means. We are going to work towards, after this week, moving this market to a day market during the course of the pandemic, so we can try to coordinate any essential trips that people are making already with going and getting their produce at the market. So it would run from 12 to 4 following this week. There's been a lot of questions and concerns in the community about the delivery of that produce and whether there are different ways to do that. And I know people are trying to come up with great solutions. Producers cannot afford to pay percentages of 15 or 25% for delivery of their produce because of the way that producers operate. They just don't have that sort of margin to work with. So while those are great ideas, and I know the farmers market folks appreciate any new and unique ideas that could be shared. I think that was one thing that in talking to the market manager this morning, he mentioned to me that they would not, producers can participate if they like, but he didn't think that there'd be a lot of people who would be working to prepackage and have them delivered because of the high cost of those delivery services. That's what I have for this week, and we will continue to monitor the market. We talked this morning about ways to even further ensure that shelter or social distancing remains at the market. So we're going to make a few tweaks, nothing major. I know the mayor was out there for a period of time as well during the market, and I don't know if he has any general thoughts about it that he'd like to share. It's totally up to him. And then I'm just making sure I don't have one more item for you. I think that was the extent of it. I'm going to stop talking. Mayor's on mute for a second.
Muted. I'm muted. Now I'm off. Okay. I would like to say, and I'll share the rest of my item 9 later, but jumping in to the farmers market, indeed, pleased with the actions taken. I will note that if volume were to pick up by shoppers, indeed, we will find ways to continue to make it as safe as possible. I understand that there is a fair amount of anxiety in the community about continuing this. I share that anxiety, but I will say that a lot of other cities are continuing to hold the farmers markets, and I was very pleased to see what I saw. I will also say that I noticed some shoppers, we were giving out masks, and I want to thank members of the Asian community, Sherry He, for giving out masks to people that wanted them. Everyone took one. So if they didn't have a mask, they put one on. I thought that was great. So I want to say that I'm looking forward to the next one here, see how it goes, and we'll take it one step at a time. I will also say that I can't wait for the time that the pandemic is over and to the later part of the summer. Hopefully, knock on wood, we get back to regular farmers markets with concerts in place. That'll be a great time. Everyone loves those types of farmers markets. This is very different, but I'm happy to see us put the precautions in place. So with that said, we'll continue with item 9 around the room. Why don't we go to item 9, update from Vice Mayor Goel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not a whole lot of updates. Obviously, we've all been trying to engage with our community in different ways, learning a lot of new lessons, and taking the opportunity to really hear from our advocacy groups and our senior leadership, both at the state and the national level. One of the things that I did want to kind of bring back, and I thought the young high school member that did speak under item 8.1 brought up a forward-thinking concept. And it's really about how do we engage volunteers when we get ready to return to norm, kind of the two components, right? Community, I guess the way you want to put it is more community methodology of looking at positive element of returning back to the norm. So developing that comfort level, and then socializing that concept, and then engaging with opportunities of how the community can help. For instance, here in our HOA that I'm a part of, we've engaged with our landscaping firm to help cleanse congested traffic zones that are high touch areas. So looking at opportunities of that and having systematic grassroots approach support the city in its effort to the return to norm. So I would kind of look to an opportunity here to gain support for consideration of such, at least to have that dialogue and bring it back as conversation items and just to kind of see, as we get ready to adjust, where can we utilize the community in developing a norm, a method, and an approach.
Could you clarify a little bit more about asking us to agree to bring something back? Exactly what are you looking for?
Basically, I guess the high school member kind of identified a specialized task force. I'm not sure if that's necessarily the approach, but a mechanism of creating a volunteer approach, very much similar to like Dublin Pride, how we go out and create the cleaning of the environment, similar in nature.
I see. Okay. What do others think? Let's see, Councilmember Josie, questions or concurrence?
Not entirely sure I'm clear on what he's asking.
Councilmember Kumagai or Councilmember Hernandez, any thoughts or questions about this item, whether we would have support?
You're on mute, Councilman. Oh. Okay, there you go. Go ahead.
Councilmember Hernandez, you're on mute.
I keep
there we go. Up.
Hold on. My computer's too fast for me. No, I understand what he's asking, but I want to ask Linda. I understand it's trying to, rally up individuals to come and help within our city, but is there any liability to that? Is it too soon to start something like that?
So without getting into the topic and getting into it too deeply, we would have to look at what sort of liability there could be in them helping us with some of our general sanitation and cleansing practices. What I might offer, if there's a desire to do this, is we could kick this idea or this discussion about this proposal to the Dublin Pride Week Committee to maybe talk a little bit about, because Dublin Pride Week is going to get postponed and there's going to be an opportunity come maybe September timeframe, but maybe as we get past the shelter in place order, Dublin Pride Week Committee could meet virtually or otherwise and kind of talk about, what does volunteering look like after we get back to relative normalcy. And maybe that's where this conversation could take place, and then maybe come up from Dublin Pride. Maybe there's some different ideas about what to do about Dublin Pride this year.
I could support that. Councilmember Goel, would you agree?
Absolutely. I think that's a proactive, smart step to do, to repurpose a mobilized effort and repurpose our ability to return to norm. So to me, that sounds like a really good compromise. And that is why I kind of identified Dublin Pride Week opportunity there, knowing that was getting postponed, and an opportunity to kind of really take the leadership from our council and city staff to mobilize a volunteer organization in a different avenue. And I'm not necessarily advocating for cleaning only, but I'm advocating for how to proactively bring the community back out, understanding what it means and purpose, and potentially support engagements of cleansing if necessary, if we can. And that's the subject of a future conversation.
I know that who is our Met representatives to Dublin Pride Week? Maybe they can.
I know I am, and Councilmember Josie, and I just think I heard Councilmember Goel volunteer in case one of us can't make it, that he'll sit on that committee. Is that what I heard, Councilmember Goel, Vice Mayor Goel?
Well, as time would have it, I have a lot of shelter in place time working 14-hour days from my desk, but yes.
Very good. Very good. Okay. With that, we need
I'm not done yet. Just because, so I think if it gets lifted, it will be gradually lifted. It's not going to happen very quickly. Another item I wanted to bring up forward is East Bay Community Energy will be allocating some funds to each one of the cities. We were going to be using that money for our marketing. And obviously we're not necessarily doing a lot of marketing right now. So we feel that it was worth giving it back a certain amount of money towards cities. And speaking to Linda, we will probably look at allocating it towards a small business program for them to help them kind of get back up on their feet. They will be allocating to the city of Dublin $51,000. And Linda and Nick can have our CEO for East Bay Community Energy can have more of a longer conversation about that, and then bring us back a report on, because I know that we're already looking at something in the future to kind of help our small businesses get back on their feet.
Councilmember, can I add on to what you're talking about? So we haven't had the conversation yet. We've tried to tackle TOT. There's a bigger conversation about what this council may want to do to assist small businesses. And if it's the council's desire to find ways to do that, similar to what Councilmember Hernandez was talking about making funds available to small businesses, we're happy to come back to you and make a proposal of things that we can do that may help people, small businesses of a certain size, kind of figure out what their needs are and how we can support them. So I know I've got Hazel working on some ideas, but I don't want to bring those forward unless the council wants to take advantage of that. Sorry, my lights are going off over here, so I don't want to go in the dark. But
if I could, and I guess you'll start moving around so the lights will turn on. I just want to make sure we have 3 people that are willing to say, kick the idea of that Councilmember or Vice Member Goel had, to refer that to the Pride Committee. And I'll just assume that we have head nods for that. And then moving on to Councilmember Hernandez's request, I think it might make great sense to have that moved to the Economic Development Committee and have a report out from that committee. So I wholeheartedly agree with the concept and think that that's the best place to bring it next, and then ultimately to the council. What do others think? Vice Member Goel, thoughts? I see a hands up. A raise of a hand by Councilmember Kumagai. Okay, let's go to Councilmember Kumagai. Thoughts?
No, that was a clap. That was like an applause.
An applause. Is that a yes? Okay.
That's a head nod.
Okay. Thoughts, Vice Member Goel? Help for small businesses.
I don't believe there's a debate to be had.
All right. Councilmember Josie, just to weigh in.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs
for the
up.
record.
All right.
Thumbs up.
Very good. Very good.
No, I just wanted to add yes. And I did have that on my notes to take it to the economic development, which you and I both sit on, Mayor, and then we'll have that further conversation. So again, East Bay Community Energy will be giving, every city gets a certain amount of this funding. Not everybody gets the same amount. And so ours would be 51,000.
Thank you for being on top of that committee, and that's a lot of money. So let's use it wisely. Anything else to report out under item 9, Councilmember Hernandez?
That is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Kumagai.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Hernandez, for bringing back a report from our EBCE committee. I haven't sat on any committees yet. I will be attending tomorrow the Housing Authority of the County of Alameda meeting, as well as our Alameda County mosquito abatement meeting. So during our next meeting, I'll be sure to bring back a report from those 2 agencies. Obviously, we haven't been getting out and about, but I do want to say that I have been trying my best from shelter in place to communicate out the information that our staff has put together. I want to commend, the amazing business resource that they put together for our small businesses. I understand that there was quite a bit of anxiety in the community about this idea of a large farmers market akin to what we normally have out there. But the fact of the matter was it just wasn't that. What it was a means for people to have access to groceries that they may not have otherwise have access to. And it's for that same reason that I've been very strongly supporting our takeout program that our economic development team put together, hashtag Dublin Eats. It's not necessarily, or it's not only that we're supporting our small businesses and our local businesses, which is very important. We want to make sure that they stay viable throughout this and that they weather this storm and that we still have them here after the shelter in place is lifted. But it's also that we want to ensure that they keep their doors open during the shelter in place, because that is access. It's food access for people who may not otherwise have the means. Maybe they have the money to pay for a food delivery from a takeout place, but they may not have the means to go out of the home and pick up food at the grocery store. So I just want us to always remember that there are people of different means out there who are going through this experience. And it is so important that we maintain these essential services for all of our residents, because if they're nervous now, they're going to be very nervous if they can't have access to food. So I want us to keep that in mind and to keep doing that. The other thing I want to say is that what I am trying to do, and we're all leaders within this community, what I am trying to do is maintain calm, to follow the advice of our professionals from the county level, our public health professionals. They have laid down very specific criteria and guidance for this shelter in place. And it's very important that we get behind that with one voice and make sure that we are getting that information out to the public and tamping down any fears or hysteria around what is happening. That being said, I do want to call attention to one issue, and that is the apparent rise in aggressions towards Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. They've been reporting experiencing microaggressions, racial profiling, hate incidents, and in some cases even hate violence. For example, in Los Angeles, a child in San Fernando Valley was physically assaulted at his middle school and accused of having the coronavirus simply because he is AAPI. On a San Francisco street, a young AAPI woman was spat upon and blamed for bringing the coronavirus to the US. Young people, as well as adults and seniors in California, fear being perceived as the source or carrier of the disease, which is just simply born out of ignorance. And I would say that we always say that we are no place for hate. I would encourage any residents, any AAPI residents of Dublin who experience any kind of microaggression, racial profiling, or hate incident to please visit a3pcon.org, A3pcon as in Asian Pacific Policy and Planning Council.org. And there, click on the link, Stop AAPI Hate. There's a form there to report to the organization if you've experienced any of this kind of behavior or hate crime. And of course, if it rises to the level of a crime, always please do call 911 and report it to our police services. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Kumagai. And Councilmember Josie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a lot today, but I do want to say a bunch of thank yous. First and foremost to Linda and Colleen for all that you're doing for all of us. I know the hours have been long and the work has been hard. And to the skeleton staff that is in the building, Sherry and Caroline and Hazel and everybody else who's actually had to come into work, thank you. Thank you. Thank you to our first responders, our Dublin Police Services and our Dublin Fire Department, Alameda County Fire Department, for everything that you guys are doing to keep our residents safe. We really, really appreciate it. You know, the healthcare workers that are putting their lives on the line every day. Thank you from me and from the council. I've been so impressed with our community and the way they are looking out for one another. For people are stepping up. There's all kinds of volunteer threads on all social media where, you know, hey, I need this, I have this, and coordinating and making things and buying things for healthcare workers that are on the front lines of this. This is when you know you live in a great community, is when something like this happens and you see the amount of people that are stepping up and helping their neighbors, checking in on on their elderly neighbors, checking in on people that are feeling isolated and helping out with emotional support, and the things that the city has been doing with the amount of communication that you guys are putting out and the amount of high quality communication that staff is putting out for small businesses, from the parks and recs, the virtual rec center, all of those things that are happening from the city have been such high quality. I'm very, very proud to be associated with this city and the city staff and the things that we're doing. So thank you and keep it up. That's all I've got for tonight.
Very good. I will echo those comments, Councilmember Josie. Very well said. And thank staff for the going above and beyond the call of duty that you're currently doing, and we know you will continue to do. Indeed, I also know that these are unprecedented times. We are entering the fourth week of our stay-at-home executive order. Last week, we were given even stricter rules and regulations to follow. We closed the skateboard parks. We closed the tennis courts. We took down basketball hoops. We are doing everything we can to flatten the curve. The experts predict that this week and next week will be the apex, the high point of the infection numbers. And so we hope that indeed coming out of that, we do flatten the curve and we do come down on those counts. But that said, we really need to brace for these next couple of weeks and expect that they will be worse than it has been in the past, and hope and pray that it becomes better coming out of that. I would like to also echo comments that were made by the community stepping up to help others. And there are numerous examples of that. And I actually just want to take a minute and highlight them. There's the Facebook group, Tri-Valley Community Help During Shelter in Place, and Michael D'Ambrosio taking the lead on that, and so many others jumping in. I think 16 or 1,700 people now signed up for that. Bay Area cotton masks, people in their homes that know how to sew. That does not include me. Making masks for other people, buying fabric, buying elastic, sewing masks together. Over 500 volunteers, I think, and Anya Alexandra and Laurel McMahon and others that are doing this in their homes. We talked about seniors that can't get out of their home, that are homebound. I want to thank Spectrum Meals on Wheels, and I want to say I was pleased to have the time to volunteer in the Dublin community, bringing meals to seniors that are homebound, and not being able to spend a lot of quality time with them face to face. It was with appropriate social distancing. We would put the meal at the door and we would step back, but we could still say hi and have a little conversation with them. And indeed, we have a sizable number of seniors who need assistance and help and are most vulnerable. As was mentioned earlier tonight, in the next couple of months, we can see and foresee perhaps even more of that. But indeed, I also want to say we've seen donations of thousands of dollars of personal protective equipment, masks, hand sanitizers, and other materials donated from all over our community, most notably the Asian American community, the Chinese American community, donating to our police department, to our fire department, to our local hospitals. They've done just a great job. And I do want to echo what Councilmember Kumagai said. We do not tolerate hate crimes or hatred or bullying or discrimination of any kind, anywhere, at any time. If you are a victim or see this occurring, please lean on the conservative side of calling 911 or calling police services. Report it. It has to be done. That said, I will also say that I appreciate our other elected officials. By that, I mean Congressman Swalwell, State Senator Glazier, and I know others are participating in town halls that help provide information, valuable information, bringing to us people at the county level, at the state level, at the federal level, their expertise and what they're seeing in a very timely way. I've participated in several of those town halls. Some of them are pre-recorded or recorded rather, so that we can go back and view them. I would ask anybody who would like to have more information on those topics to do that, especially State Senator Steve Glazier. has about 6 or 7 pre-recorded town halls. And I'm really looking forward to this Thursday when we have our own examples of that. And Ms. Smith, thank you for putting that together so quickly. 10 o'clock, 11:30, and 1 o'clock, great topics of discussion. I want to say that TV30, in addition to setting up the Zoom for tonight's City Council meeting, has also adopted Zoom for the ability to provide the weekly mayor's report. So we did our very first recording of the TV30 mayor's report, which we did this week. We had special guest Tracy Farhad from Visit Tri-Valley, host former Assemblywoman Catherine Baker. It went off without a hit. So TV30, you're on a roll. Thank you, doing great work. And lastly, I'd like to say that I have also fielded requests, and I'll ask Ms. Smith to comment on this, requests for when can we have in the Tri-Valley area, if we could, a testing site. And I've seen across the county other sites that have been stood up, I believe in Fremont, I believe in Hayward, I believe perhaps even in Oakland. So what are our plans? I believe there's work in place. Pleasanton has talked about doing this for the city of Pleasanton, but we also have the opportunity to expand that to the rest of the Tri-Valley. Could you please comment? And you're muted, Linda.
Fun. Okay, so thank you, Mayor. So right now we're in communication with our other Tri-Valley partners in Alameda County, including City of Pleasanton and Livermore. Stanford Valley Care Hospital is trying to stand up a testing center over at the Alameda County Fairgrounds. They hope to do that soon. Sorry, my lights are going to go off again. Let me just move there. Thank you. They are working to set that up. And we have committed to being a partner in helping them orchestrate and help fund some of the testing supplies that are going to be necessary to stand up that testing center. I've seen a general proposal. It will be run and led by physicians, unlike what the city of Fremont is doing in the city of Hayward, where the firefighter paramedics are leading that. Valley Care would like it to be led by physicians and nurses and healthcare workers. So we would play a supportive role in helping them stand up this facility and also serve in helping to contribute funding to pay for those tests and the PPE necessary to keep that moving and operational. I don't have the details yet. I think they would like to do physician evaluation on site in addition to doing testing on site. So we could try to figure out who needs to be tested as they come through the facility, and then be able to administer up to, I think, 200 tests a day. So that's something that we're hoping to get online here very soon, probably in the next week or so.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Smith. With that concludes my item 9. Unless I see any other thoughts or comments forwarded by the council members, I'm seeing none. I will say thank you again to TV30. We have just completed our very first technologically advanced Zoom meeting. Great job, without a hitch. Things went off very well. I'm very proud of everybody. Let's keep up the good work. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay home, and let's stay Dublin strong. We are adjourned.